sometimes I've discovered that if I, for example, if I pray for patience, what I get in my life are many opportunities to practice patience. We affirm prosperity every week. And sometimes the way we know our prosperity is by facing some challenges to it and acting on them according to our principles. And for today and next week, because I'll be here 2 Sundays in a row for a change, I'm excited. I'm going to be looking at one particular piece of the second principle, which says, I am inherently good. We say it every Sunday. I don't think we believe it. I don't think we really take in and understand what we're saying by that. We are inherently good. Well, I was thinking this week, I came across a quote that really sparked my talk from this week. And this is from Richard Rohr, who's a Franciscan theologian. I subscribe to his newsletter, and he's just wonderful. And he wrote this: we thought we came to God by doing it right. And lo and behold, surprise of surprises, we come to God by doing it wrong and growing because of it. Isn't that lovely?
Yeah.
Does that give you a little bit of permission to breathe a little more in your life and give a little less attention to whether you're doing it right? The point is to do it and pay attention to what you're doing so that you can learn from the lessons. Well, that led me to consideration of what are called the 7 deadly sins. You've heard of the 7 deadly sins. They've been part of Christianity for 1,700 years. Pope Gregory, God bless him, first defined the 7 deadly sins. He was also the Pope who decided that Mary Magdalene was a prostitute. Parenthetically, that's just... So his influence was pretty strong.
Our current Pope has reversed that, though.
I beg your pardon?
The current Pope has reversed that.
The current Pope has absolutely reversed that. He's reversed quite a few things that Pope Gregory I had in mind. So there is clearly something, though, important about that list, because, for one thing, artists of all sorts have been using that list for creative purposes almost since they were first defined. I think of Bosch, I think of Kurt Weill in the 20th century. Even the movie Seven, if you remember or have seen the movie Seven, was based on, it was a serial killer who was basing it according to the 7 deadly sins. I don't recommend you use them that way, but I'm just saying. They're often used. And I think we have to start with a clear understanding of what we mean by sin. Sometimes in Unity, people like to think that, well, we don't believe in sin. Well, yes, we do. We do indeed. We take it back to its absolute roots, to its meaning as missing the mark. It is missing the mark. Think of an archer shooting toward a target and missing. Okay, that doesn't mean he's going to be punished or in hell for all eternity. It means the next time he needs to learn from that lesson, change his aim, and try again. And eventually he will hit the target. And the same is true of us, and that's basically the basic message, is sin is an opportunity to learn and grow. That's what Father Rowe was saying in that quote I read. Sin is an opportunity to grow. We may be the only church on the planet that is saying this morning, we're grateful for sin, but we are. Because we're not here, if we were here to simply exist, we wouldn't need sin at all. We wouldn't need to make those kinds of choices. We would simply be who we are. Little, I call them bubbles of I amness, just little bubbles floating around, being the divine that we are. But we are here to be creative. We are here to create the kingdom. And creating the kingdom requires us to make a lot of choices. And we're not expected to get them all right. We wouldn't be doing our job if we did. We create through conflict, we create through appearances of duality. So we create by making mistakes, learning from the mistakes, choosing again, and eventually finding the choice that creates the kingdom. And what is so is that the more we know that and the more we work at it, the easier it becomes to make that switch. Something that took 14 arrows a few years ago before we ever got to the target may take one arrow now. We're quicker to realize when we're off, and we're quicker to know exactly how to get on. And that is a tremendous gift of following this spiritual path. Now, the 7 deadly sins are very different, I think, from the 10 commandments. The commandments, which arrive to us earlier in our spiritual path, if we look at the Bible as an ongoing journey, that a description of a journey that we're all involved in, a spiritual journey toward that realization, which Jesus called the kingdom of heaven. If that is so, then early in that development, it was seen that we needed some guidance. The 10 commandments are all about behavior in the outer. Do this, don't do that. All have to do with the physical world. How do we get through this physical world while we're trying to work a spiritual journey? And that is probably the challenge that each of us faces on a daily basis. How do I get through a spiritual world, a physical world, while I'm knowing I'm a spiritual being? Sometimes it can be very, very difficult. The 7 deadly sins take us deeper into the realm of consciousness, out of which all actions emerge and all choices flow. They aren't about what to do or what not to do, they're about how to be. The state of consciousness from which we approach all the choices of life. So we learn from the 7 deadly sins, I call them the 7 lively sins. We learn from the 7 lively sins how to make the correct choices, how to be that spiritual being that is making choices according to that spiritual truth. And I see, because I love the number 7. I go nuts for the number 7. It appears everywhere in Scripture. It appears everywhere on the planet. And it's always symbolic, I think, of the fact that there are 7 stages we go through in this human existence, between the gate of birth and the gate of death. There are 7 stages we go through in order to achieve our spiritual purpose before we move on. Because I don't know about you, but I don't want to come back and do this all again. I don't want to go through junior high again. I don't want to do that. So I'd rather get as much done this time through as I can, because as Jennifer mentioned, I truly believe to the point of knowing that I have lived lives before, and I will probably live lives again, because as far as I know, I'm not getting it 100% this time. But there are 7 stages, and following those stages helps us understand where we are in the process, where we are on that road, what we need to know, what we need to focus on to move forward from any place where we consider ourselves stuck. So we're going to look at 3 lively sins this morning, and the first is sloth. So what that word sloth. Now in the outer, sloth is laziness. Sloth is, none of you are slothful or you wouldn't be here this morning. The slothful people are the ones who say, oh, it's too much trouble, I won't find a parking place. And I have Reverend Ed speaking, and he always says the same thing. I just don't have the energy to move forward. I don't have the energy to stand up and take a step in the direction of my spiritual path. Sloth. And Jesus, among other great teachers, makes it clear that our spiritual journey to new consciousness requires a sense of dissatisfaction with the status quo. He was always encouraging people to question the status quo, question where you are, question who you think you are, what you think life is about, and then be willing to take action. And sloth short circuits the willingness to take action. It's easier to sit and think about spiritual things rather than it is to get up and join with others on a spiritual path, get up and apply those spiritual ideas to the life around you. And but the positive side of sloth is surrender. I think there's a positive side to each of these lively sins, and the positive side for sloth is surrender, because we need to be willing to give up our own efforts in order to allow Spirit to work through us. The truth is, I can't do it myself. I can't get started on my own. I can't overcome my own spiritual inertia because my mortal mind doesn't want me to. My mortal mind is the voice within me that's saying, oh, you stay in bed a few minutes more, you're late already and it's probably too late. And, just talks us into experiencing the deadly sin, the lively sin. So sloth is a deadly sin if it holds us back from the work that's necessary to discover and express our spiritual nature. It's a lively sin if it guides us to new choices that encourage us to move on. So if I'm using my quiet time to surrender to Spirit, to release resistance, to simply allow myself to be who I truly am and to know what I truly know, then sloth can be very useful. The next sin, the next consciousness we encounter as our journey begins to unfold is pride. Now in some ways, pride is the polar opposite of sloth, isn't it? Pride is, I can do it all myself, thank you very much. If the mortal mind can't stop us at one end of the spectrum, it'll go to the other end and try to stop us there. The negative energies of pride are an arrogant assumption that I can handle everything myself. I'm in charge here. I know what I need. I know what I want. I know how to get it. But the positive side of pride is confidence. I'm not perfect. I'm not in charge. I don't even know what it is I'm seeking. But I have confidence in the presence of God. I truly am. I have confidence in myself. Jennifer's meditation this morning was all about affirming ourselves, not trying to get lost in the allness of the universe, but I'm here as me for a specific reason. And I can't express that if I don't accept the truth of who I am. I am a spiritual being. I am one with God. I am that spiritual bubble of allness that brings me here, carries me through, and will carry me further yet. The interplay between arrogance and confidence is important, and it can be tricky, can't it? Mm-hmm. We must cross that line from one to the other many times each day. Mm-hmm. Arrogance is a deadly sin that removes me from the power of love. Arrogance separates me from you. It separates me, it gives me the perception of being higher than everybody else, so I don't connect with everybody else. People who are truly arrogant do not feel the love, no matter how much love there may be in the room. If they're arrogant, if they think this is too good for me, I'm above this, love isn't going to seep through. Confidence is a lively sin that encourages me to know my personal power. And that's a very important stage, knowing the truth of who I am. So, the third lively sin we're talking about this morning is gluttony. The word itself, what a word, huh? Gluttony. It sounds like what it is somehow. It comes from the Latin glutere, which means to gulp down. It's a nasty sounding word, but there is a positive spiritual energy at work as well. We've learned so far that the creative process begins in a state of potential, which can be expressed as the positive energy out of sloth. It then requires that we claim a sense of self, that we embrace our own creative power so that we can move forward. So there's a positive creative energy to this sin as there is to all others. Are there negative consequences to getting out of balance, to focusing on this urge for experience to the exclusion of everything else? We do this individually when we overindulge, we overconsume. so that energies intended for our good become expressions of illness and negative energy. And as we are increasingly aware today, we commit the sin of gluttony collectively when we abuse the earth and its inhabitants, grasping and wasting without regard for consequence. That is the sin of gluttony. The positive side of gluttony is a willingness to embrace it all. That feeling you sometimes get, I know you get it, of just being one with everything, and I want everything, and I want to experience everything. I've been fortunate enough to travel to many parts of the world. And my problem with traveling is that I don't want to be a tourist. I want to embrace the whole thing. I want to live there. I want to live everywhere. And I haven't figured out how to do that yet, but I haven't given up. That's the positive side of gluttony. I just want it all. I want this, I want to be all that I can be, and I want to experience everything that everybody else can be. So when we make mistakes, and we do, we will, we can count on it, we observe in a non-judgmental way. We correct our aim according to what mistake has taught us. And we try again. We load another arrow. We aim at the target. And we will hit it. Maybe not this time, but we will. And there's nothing wrong about missing the target. There's everything good, because if you're not willing to miss the target, if you won't even pick up the bow because you're afraid you'll fail, you're not accomplishing your spiritual purpose. We're here to fail and learn and make new choices and move on. That's why Jesus loved sinners, aside from the fact that they threw the best parties. My first unity minister used to say, if there's a party in the New Testament, you know who is there. And it's true. It's true. He knew that the sinners, restless, dissatisfied, feeling called to something more. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are you if you are feeling lack, if you are feeling restless, if you are feeling any of the negative effects of these sins. Use it as a guide, as an awakening, as a message saying it's time to move on. So this week, find time to be in the moment. Celebrate the input from all your senses, how things look and sound and smell and feel and taste. Let your appreciation create a memory. That is so important. That's really the essence of Heart Math, a program which I have spent a lot of time studying and working with, is keep in your heart a group of memories of times that were just perfect, a place you were, a relationship you were in, a pet you had, just an image of something absolutely perfect, something that brings you as close to being spirit as you ever have felt. And then with that energy in your heart, trust the decisions you'll make, because you'll make decisions based on that positive image. So release it, confident that every moment will be equally as rich and memorable as we continue this great journey together. Next week we have some fun sins to look at, including lust. So if that doesn't pack the place, I don't know what will. Talking about lust, yes we will. And I hope you understand how this intrigued me this week. How we can work with the whole idea of sin. We have to stop tiptoeing around it or being afraid of it. We have to embrace it. We have to say, yes, we do sin. We do make mistakes. But we learn from them and we move on. We don't keep making the same mistake over and over again, thinking, well, this time it'll work. We learn. We move on. Blessings.
Thank you.